Hey everyone, we are back again with another Dragonheir video, and in this video we'll be talking about the champions that I would like to see changed. So basically this is my wish list where I go through each of these affinities and pick out which champions needs to be buffed, because some of these are really bad, and I'm be selecting one legendary and one epic from each of these affinity. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with these changes or if there is another champ that you would like to see first being buffed. But let's start with the fire affinity right away, and the champion that I'm going to pick is not as bad actually, but the reason that I'm going to be picking him is because Casper, he has this amazing ultimate, right, where he deals whatever damage, and then for the next 15 seconds, whenever an ally does a wild check, he's going to throw these 3 daggers. Now, what I really want them to change is that these 3 daggers currently do not count towards a wild. So basically, they don't count towards any wild check. They're just like 20% of the attack fire damage, which is pretty weak. Like if this was a derivative damage dealer, it would be strong, and I would say like, okay, besides Flora, there's another derivative damage dealer. So my suggestion to them is that either make this a wild. So this dagger effect also takes additional damage if he has a successful wild check, and he can be used with Flora then, right? Right now he cannot be used with Flora. Eric and Tona are much better. Or make this a derivative damage dealer, right? This 20% attack, just make it like 100% attack and plus the derivative damage dealer, so we can use him as in our Vortex teams if for people who do not have Flora, and he's another derivative damage dealing option. For the epic, I was in between Fira and Liko, but I'll go with Liko because she is supposed to be a reward free champion in the game. She is not summonable from any source, so you can only get her through, I believe it was the Pillars of Trial, if I'm not mistaken, or from Famiana, one of them. This champion is a bit weird because she's a single target healer and she is a debuffer for buff prohibition. She also dispels buff, so she's pretty cool in that. What I really want them to do is that make it a bit more AoE, her heals. So similar to what Furbat does, similar to what Acelia does, like there's it shouldn't be a single target heal with the lowest HP. I think make it a bit more surrounding enemies, surrounding allies get that. And instead of this buff prohibition, which I get is for arena, if you want to make her for buff prohibition entirely, expand the range, make it a bit more diamond, or similar to what Garika has. That would be, I think, too much to ask, but like there are champions like Varesh who do a AoE block buff, right? So this one, if you have to make the range small or a single target, make it attack penalty 2. And this goes without saying, but every epic, there are several in this game who have an attack penalty 1 on their ultimate or on their battle skill. They should not be having those. Everything should be attack penalty 2. So definitely make this change where she's placing the buff prohibition either on the entire map or in a diamond formation, expand this range, or make it a single target attack penalty 2, which will also be really good. So she's dispelling and placing an attack down. There's only one champion else in the game who does a dispel and attack down, and that's a Vinyara. So he dispels all buffs basically. So having somebody from the epic would be really cool to go with, and she's free, so let more people enjoy her. To be honest, she's not going to be used with her current kit anywhere. And also on her passive, I don't really know what they say, like if they don't have any buff. So grants an accuracy up to the hero if they don't have any buffs. Otherwise, this passive makes no sense. I mean, accuracy up is good, but what's the point of it? Like, you only want it to be there on the ultimate, and before the ultimate, she's going to be placing a defense up of somebody. So yeah, just rework this passive as well. I particularly don't like this passive at all. So she overall definitely needs a much more rework than Casper. Casper is more of a wish list. Moving over to Frost, the champion that I would like to see buffed the most is Yurian, and not too much change. I believe that this ultimate recharge time is way too high. So if you look at the other defense unit, right, who's actually hitting others, Yurian doesn't have a hitting ultimate. This is a recharge time of 9 seconds. Okay, this has a recharge time of also 9 seconds. And this is single target, so granted it's not that much, but Philoshad, who does a buff, is 11 seconds. So make Yurian's ultimate recharge time far lower. I think it should be on pace with what Lucian has, or if not, then just make it a second higher than that, because it's just a buff that he's going to do with ally protection. And there are champions who are doing it faster, right? So there's Philotia who's doing the damage reduction faster, and this damage reduction is only for this champion only, and the shield is for this champion only. The only thing that is going on all your allies is the ally protection. So making the recharge time a bit faster would make him to be used in arena. Right now there is basically no place for him because overall he's pretty mediocre. Like, this attack penalty 2 is not AoE. There are champions like Urganda who do it on hit, so which is perfect. You just have to place him and everybody else gets their attack down. This passive is okay. It keeps him alive in the situation where he's almost about to die, but if he is in a situation where he's almost about to die, you're basically losing anyway. So this doesn't really have much of a impact unless you are using him for some early game for Venom. Outside of that, it's not that useful. Even in arena, like that last moment of last hiccup, it's not going to it's not going to be protecting you from anything. So rework this passive as well. Make it so like whenever an ally is hit for the first time, grants this to them. Then it's interesting, right? Because then your DPS has this. So similar to what Mithrasi does. But overall, I would personally feel like Yurian would benefit the most from a buff. There's also Hokage who's subpar in my opinion, but there's too many DPSs here. There's not enough defense unit, and Lucian has a very specific PvP role. Yurian doesn't have a role anywhere. So that's where we stand in this game. For the epics, I was looking through and I was thinking like, what exactly would I want? And when I look at Dokuras, right, his kit has derivative damage. He's the only frost unit with the derivative damage. But the problem is it's on his basic attacks, which are like 2.16 seconds. Right? So I feel like make his entire kit derivative damage dealer. So we have a derivative damage dealer in Frost. We have it for every other affinity. We have, I think, for Radiance also, I think there's only Filter who does it on basic attacks. But their regular damage is so high that, you don't really feel the need to have it. But Frost doesn't really have anything going for PvE. So having a champion that does derivative damage would be really, really cool. And since this champion already does derivative damage, make it scaling a bit higher. 40% is way too low. I feel like it's similar to what Ellie has, who's a poison rare. So it could be at least 80% double what a rare does. And yeah, this should be changed. Like, there should be a derivative damage here. So make his kit overall a derivative damage dealing kit. But he's generally a good champion regardless. Moving over to Necrotic. Necrotic has a lot of weak links, but the number one, I think I've already made a review video on YouTube. He should be buffed. He's complete trash right now in the game, and since it's a reward champion which requires you to do a lot of work, yeah, having him as a pretty subpar unit really is hurtful for a lot of players who have like really building your team, 6 teams for Continent Dungeon and everything, and having a champion like this, it's pretty bad. On the epic side, Storian is total trash right now. I don't know what he is supposed to be. He's not a damage dealer, he's not a support. He just doesn't work very well. Make Storian similar to what Nathaniel is, right? They look alike, why don't their skills alike? Like, give them somebody with attack down, give them somebody with like more utility, more healing. Because right now the healing options are very limited. There's Zaloth who does healing as well. But overall they need to like expand the support options for Necrotic. So make Storian like, instead of a summon unit, just make him as a support unit and give him some healing. Even if he gives attack up, that's fine, but like change this to like, healing your entire team, because the amount of healers in this faction are very low. Estella is there as well, who's a great healer, but yeah, not close to what you really have to look through a legendary option here if you want to build a proper team over here. So make him a good support, give him like attack down, give him like some healing similar to what Gulen does, but on a shorter cooldown. That would be really, really cool. In Radiance, the champion that I really think needs a buff is Donella. Donella has a full AoE attack penalty too. There's no, like, it's an amazing ability. And this bird thing is a healing prohibition which attacks randomly. I think the problem with this is like they haven't figured out like what this champion is going to be used at. She's a melee unit who's also a support unit, right? So making melee and support is a very difficult option. That's why I like Garika as well. Although her kit is amazing, it's very difficult to like use in certain situations. Like champions like Ripkas can counter her very easily because they have stun. So definitely figure out like whether to make it melee, or if you want to make her melee, like give her something more that can sustain herself. Like instead of this puppet that she has for healing prohibition, make it a bit more frequent instead of just 5 seconds. Because when you're fighting against a team of 5 other players, yeah, this doesn't go as well as you plan. Also, the stun is fine. The attack penalty too, and this thing, like make it remove like debuffs instead of accuracy penalty. Accuracy penalty is a very weak debuff in the game. So having somebody in Radiance who can remove buffs is going to be really powerful. So give her something a bit more cooler so that we can use her. And the ult recharge time is way too high. If you are going to give her like multiple things, like just for attack penalty, I feel like this recharge time is way too high, especially for PvP. Like there are several units have the same cooldown, epics, legendaries. So for her to be used, she needs to be a bit better, because if she's going to be a melee, she's going to be a support, she needs to do multiple things on one of these ultimates to really be effective in arena. Or even in PvP, like she needs to do something else besides this accuracy penalty. So I would take out this accuracy penalty entirely and give her something a bit better, something where she is removing a single buff, or place a block buff, something better for arena in general so that she can be used. In the Radiance, I'm going to go a similar approach with Gum. He's a reward as well from either Meander or Pillars of Trial. And it's just a bonkers of like a really trash champion. Like it's insane to me like how bad this champion is, because he's doing attack penalty 1. He's doing an inflicting stun, but it only launches 3 attacks, right? It's not full, it's 3 attacks within this range. So it's not AoE technically. Like just give it an AoE stun, like make it a bit more consistent, and give this attack penalty too. Like there's really no, like it's not a big area that he's doing attack penalty to begin with, and on top of it you are hampering him with like attack penalty 1. So it's really weird. And so he dispels a debuff, but it should be like, it's weird because he's only inflicting a debuff here. The blind and the stun don't count towards a debuff. So it's only on the battle skill that he's going to remove 1 debuff from a random ally, which I think is still weak. It's fine overall, but it's still very weak. It's only a 30% chance to begin with. So just make it 100% chance, because he's only placing 1 debuff. I mean, granted the range, he could place like 2 or 3 at most. But yeah, I mean, he's doing attack penalty 1. Like just make it attack penalty 2, make this 100%, or make it an 80%, 70% chance to dispelling 1 debuff from a random ally. So he could be used then. Like right now, nobody's going to be using him. It's such a bad champion. So just rework the champion's kit entirely, and then we can probably say like, okay, it's better to use him somewhere else. In Lightning, Lightning is weird because they have amazing champions. I personally already made a video on like the exclusive, but I'm gonna be going non-exclusive. Is going to be Beyond Frey. This ultimate is really, really good, and when you are at level 5 inspiration, this ult reduction happens for 5 seconds. So it's a really fast ultimate too if you are fully max inspired. The problem with this ultimate is that this electricity every 1.25 seconds, so it's not a stun right away. And this actually causes you some issues as well, because they can ultimate right after his ultimate, and then get stunned. So there's no really point when they've already ultimated, right? The whole idea of somebody who's able to control the enemy team is that you don't allow them to ultimate first. But if they already ultimate first and then they get stunned, there's really no point to it. He has a very cool battle skill as well, where he gets control immunity. This is good because a lot of the tanks in arena do have the Holy Hunter set, and it makes it very challenging to keep like control immunity on your tank or on some of your melee support units or your melee DPS. So having control immunity is still good. This skill is still good as well. The biggest challenge again is just his ultimate. His ultimate needs to be better. He's not a debuffer entirely, he's just full control unit, which is fine for me. But the problem again is that, yeah, the range needs to be expanded, and this stun needs to be, this 1.25 seconds should be removed. Like, just change it to like where he's just stunning everybody, right? Like it would be much better overall. Next up in the lightning epics is Naguk. Naguk is really weak as well. He creates the static field. It's very similar to Beyond Frey kit, but the static field, he's going to expand the range, and then this is going to hit somebody and it's going to stun. Having a defense unit do some stuff like that is fine, but like give him, like, this is very inconsistent control effects, right? They're not consistent enough for you to like properly use these champions over and over in arena or in because that's the only place where you would use control that much. You can use it in Fey Meander or Pillars of Trials as well if you're struggling there, but the real place of all these control debuffs is in arena. And this guy, his kit entirely needs to be revamped. This 10% defense up, this 30% defense up needs to be changed to 60% defense up. It should be defense up too. And the shield is fine, but he needs to have some more survivability option. Right as it is, his defense is pretty low for a defense unit, so it's very hard to keep him alive as well. And he doesn't really have any survivability within his kit. Like a lot of these tanks, they do have some sort of like a hit recovery, or either they're just like taunting or like they're controlling, like we saw in Beyond Frey, on the battle skill as well, or on the passive. He has nothing of those things, so it's very hard to keep him alive. And as a tank, he completely fails for PvP mostly. And I guess he's designed for PvP entirely because stun is not used on bosses at all. So definitely this champion needs to be buffed, completely revamped. In poison, I think this one is a meme now. This is going to be Talwar. I've already talked about the exclusive, which is Reta, in my previous video, so hope she gets buffed to it. But this one is also weird because Reta reduces the damage, all incoming damage for everybody. He only reduces the damage for himself. It is fine. I think the taunt range is still good. Like the problem with him is like this derivative bonus damage. It doesn't really make any sense because I've tried him with enlightenment, and it just didn't work. Like if you read through it, like this seems like the hardest hitting derivative damage dealer, right? Because it deals like 150% attack, but when it's dies, so every 5 seconds, right? And he's gonna spawn like a bunch of them on his ultimate too. Cast a spore that exists for 4 seconds. So this doesn't deal that much damage to begin with. Like I used to think like, okay, this multiplier is really high. Maybe it does work really well, but it doesn't, unfortunately. There's one stock of poison, blind, taunt. They're like all very good debuffs. Don't get me wrong, but the problem is that it doesn't just work. Like if there's something, like if you play and test him, it doesn't work as it's stated. It's not as effective. So it's something going on with this kit. Like even over here, like 60% attack, 600% enlightenment, derivative poison damage. Now, for those of you who don't know how the derivative damage works, really is like this multiplier. So treat enlightenment as some sort of like a crit damage. So if I go back, right, let me actually go back down, and let's go to my flora. And if I click here, it says that the current multiplier for derivative damage is 237%. Right, this is almost like half of what my enlightenment is. And if you read the derivative damage, it's 170% of the attack, right? 170% times 1 plus 2.38. That's the calculation for your derivative damage. Now, if you look at the Talwar again, right? So let's go back to Talwar. This is like 80% attack and 600% enlightenment derivative damage. And it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Like, I've tried him out. He doesn't hit hard. His skill reads like it's going to hit for really hard, but it doesn't. The accuracy penalty, again, like it's one of the weakest debuffs in the game. There's basically no purpose for it. There are some useful cases, but they're so limited that it's not worth having it. If the hero is under poison, the hero will have 100% chance of inflicting attack penalty too. I think this condition needs to be removed, where they have to be on poison, so he could be used much more often, because a lot of times you build units with cross affinity pairing. So poison is currently paired with fire, so you could use a lot of fire units and still want somebody who can place attack down. So having that requirement of being your enemy being poisoned just kind of hampers your ability to use him more effectively. So he definitely needs a buff for sure. I think rather than a buff, I think he needs to be completely reworked, because as it is, he's not going to be used anywhere. In this one, the epics, they're all really good epics. Sifris is also pretty good. The only problem is like her cooldown is a bit too high, and I get that she's a reviver and that's why the cooldown is a bit high, but this is on par with what Mithrasi cooldown is, if I'm not mistaken, and this is just way too high. I think 22 seconds for an epic is still okay, because she's not reviving everybody, she's only reviving 2, so having a little bit of more leeway would be a bit better. But overall, this faction has really cool epics. Like you have recharge speed penalty and attack penalty too for a lot of these people, which all have a great utility in PvE especially. But Sifris is one where I definitely feel like she's a bit lackluster, like 20% of the max HP of her HP, so you can build her with a lot of HP, but there's no enlightenment bonus, so you don't really need to build a lot of enlightenment. A lot of these units have some sort of like an enlightenment stuff, but this consumption of the HP also is kind of detrimental. So that's why, like, if she's already going to reduce her HP by 30%, like there shouldn't be a recharge speed penalty on her as well. Like 24 seconds is way too high. So having somebody who's going to be a resurrector, alternative resurrector, because she's only going to be resurrecting 2 people, it's having it on a very long cooldown just doesn't make sense. So definitely reduce this cooldown to be a bit more forgiving, so because she's already getting this 30% HP penalty on her. But that's pretty much about it, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Which champions do you want to get balanced? Do you want to get buffed or nerfed? But hopefully these changes are implemented in season 2. I can't wait for. I think there should be another patch in between now and season 2 where they balance some of these changes. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.